welcome everybody. My name is Jory Emery, and I am the Director of Network Engagement at the Children in Nature Network. I'm joining you today from Northern California in the ancestral homelands of the Nisenan people. Children in Nature Network supports a global movement of leaders working to turn the trend of an indoor childhood back out to the benefits of nature, and to make sure that all children have equitable access to outdoor spaces where they can learn, play, and grow. I come to my role here as an artist who is especially interested in art, nature, and community. So I'm especially excited about today's panel discussion. As a part of Children in Nature Network's commitment to lifting the voices and perspectives of children and teens, we are planning a youth art exhibition. We are inviting submissions of visual art, poetry, and creative writing from youth worldwide that addresses nature connection, equity, and justice. This art exhibition is an opportunity for parents and teachers to support their children and students in exploring some of the critical issues related to nature access and racial and environmental justice, so that we can all together imagine a nature-filled future for all kids everywhere. To better understand the role that nature can play in nature, the role that art can play in nature connection for young people, I'm joined here today by Ken Rivera, Zach Pine, and Sheila Williams Ridge. I'll ask each of you to share a bit about yourselves and your work before we dive into a conversation. So let's get started. Sheila, do you want to kick us off?
Sure. Hello, and thank you so much for having me today. I'm Sheila Williams Ridge. I work as the director of the lab school at the University of Minnesota. And at the lab school, we work with children ages 2 to 5, and then we work with students in our early childhood program who are getting a degree, either an undergraduate or graduate degree, to work with children birth to 3rd grade. I've been here for about 11 years, and over the past year, we've made a change to a nature-focused outdoor curriculum, which we found to be safer during the pandemic. And we've had a wonderful year, so I'm looking forward to sharing some things with you.
Thanks, Sheila. Zach, would you like to share a bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Jory. Yeah, I'm Zach Pine, and I'm calling you from the San Francisco Bay Area, the ancestral home of Miwok people and Ohlone people. And I work as a socially engaged environmental artist. Socially engaged means that my medium is actually people. I work with groups of people to help connect them with the natural world and each other. And I'm an environmental artist, so my work is oriented towards actions that help the environment. Connecting people with nature is like a foundational step in that. You take care of what you love, and you love what you have created in and with. So that's why I work where I work and how I work. I'll pass it back to you, Joy.
Thanks. And Ken.
Thank you for having me here. My name is Ken Rivera, and I'm a K-5 teacher in Minneapolis Public School District. I've been teaching art for 10 years, and I really like connecting kids to nature and try to get them out of the classroom and take them outside. I was born in Los Angeles, California, in an urban city, and I know how art has helped me live in the city, so I like connecting the kids to the outdoors too. So that's what I like to do. Happy to share today my time with you.
Thanks, Ken. So Sheila, help us set the stage here. With your background in nature-based learning, can you tell us a little bit about the value of nature-based learning and the proven benefits for children, and how that's connected to healthy kids and a healthy planet?
Sure. It's one of the things I love to talk about, and one of the reasons that I get so excited to talk about it is that you don't have to kind of sacrifice anything else. You can give children all of these wonderful joy-filled experiences and also meet all of their developmental needs. So whether it's their physical needs for large motor or fine motor, like this week in Minnesota is very muddy. There's lots of fine motor opportunities, but also large motor, like going through mud and doing all of those things. And then all the cognitive benefits. And the Children in Nature Network actually has a wonderful resource library where you can dig into developmental benefits that you can find for children. And that is just continuing to grow. There's so much research happening. A couple of years ago, they did a research review or literature review about the research that's happening in the field, and it just shows such a blossoming of our understanding of how nature is impacting the lives of young children. So one of the areas that I focus on is social emotional and mental health and wellness, and how we can, especially during a pandemic, foster areas of calm and peace for young children outdoors, and also setting ourselves in this place and thinking about both the historical context and the current context of the place that we live in and how important that is for children. So in Minnesota, that means thinking about the history of the river. We're only about 25 yards from the Mississippi River, and it is such an important cultural part of the city and has been for millennia. So really getting children to investigate and spend time in these places. And, it's Minnesota, so winter, it really sets you in place when you spend time outdoors in all sorts of weather. And having those hands-on experiences for young children is so important. And so we really kind of foster that type of learning here. And we so I'm in the Institute of Child Development, and they really study like how children learn. And so we try and integrate those things into our nature-based practice and outdoor activities here. And just thinking about the connection for children later in life, there are some wonderful studies that really point to the early years as being really impactful in later attitudes and behavior towards nature, and how those behaviors can blossom throughout children's lives. So helping them when they're very young create meaningful relationships with nature, encouraging them to wonder and awe at what's happening around them, and also to kind of foster a sense of care, I think is, it's also joyful. And I love spending time outside with young children. Today, because the snow has melted, we found a pile of those maple leaves or helicopters, or maple seeds, or helicopters as we like to call them. And the children were just throwing piles of them into the air. And sure, there's some great math and physics that's happening. And also it was just a lot of fun. So I think that that's really important for us as teachers and for children to find spaces where they can do that. And just in the area of art, I think that is so important for us to connect with. We love to do things like play drums outside and then create things. Right now we have some construction, so there's a lot of painting with natural materials like mud and sticks, but also painting with paint and seeing how that shapes our environment. And when children do art, they're also looking at things very closely, especially if they're doing art inspired by something else. And so those kind of powers of observation that they're using to engage in art, whether it's through photography or painting or writing in their journal, they're really doing some foundational science work where they're thinking about what they're looking at. And I think it just helps build a great understanding for young children.
Great. Thank you so much, Sheila. And Ken and Zach, maybe you can address my next question on how we can help expand and activate the benefits of learning outdoors to help kids explore a deeper relationship, deeper understanding of the natural world through art and art making. Either of you want to jump in on that one?
Thanks, Ken. Yeah, so I'm with the image of those helicoptering maple seeds right now, because I want to think about the word art in what you just said, and how the art making where you're painting with mud is one kind of art making, but actually throwing those maple helicopters in the air is another type of art. It's an ephemeral art, and it's an artistic experience because it's creative. You're making something happen, and you're seeing something beautiful in the sky. And I think that that's a great example of what you were talking about, Jory, because it does lead to understanding. You know, if you're painting with mud, you might ask, why does this look dark and not light? Or if you're throwing helicopters, why is it spinning like that? Oh, there's a seed in here. Why is there a seed in here? And why should it helicopter? Oh, is that about how the trees get planted and how they move farther from their mother tree? So there's a way in which creating with something is an avenue towards curiosity and understanding. And then the other thing that's central in my work is connection, not just to nature, but also to each other. And that I'm sure that helicopter experience was not a solo one. And something about shared experiences is extra powerful. So I'm hoping that in the art exhibit that's coming up, some children and grown-ups will work together, and groups will work together, and maybe someone will get their friends together and throw some helicoptering maple leaves in the air and take a picture of them and say, we're submitting this as our socially engaged maple leaf artwork for the exhibit. So yeah, understanding, connection, artistic expression, and the word art, please think of it in an expanded way. All of our creative activities are artistic, even what you chose to wear today. I put on the flowers because I was thinking about nature today. Ken, is there anything else that you want to say about that? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think for me, it's what I'm working on, and with the limited time that I have with students in a public school, is getting them outdoors. So many students spend so many hours indoors, and I think it's a challenge with like the scheduling. I get 1 hour a week with kids, and I have 500 students. So it's like, how can I get these kids outside? And, you know, a lot of times it's the kids that have so much energy that have a hard time sitting all day in the classroom that I really want to get out there and have them explore. So I think my last few years of teaching is trying to figure out a system where I can like make it safe for them to be outside, and also to just within the public school system, make it part of like they need to be outside. I feel like they spend so much time in their classroom sitting and listening that it's really a challenge for principals to trust the kids outside, especially right now with the pandemic. So I've been developing my curriculum around that to engage kids outside and actually just talk to administration, make them feel like it's a safe space. They can be outside and making art. And with that one limited hour that I have, you know, how can I engage them out there? So I'm enjoying my time. I'm getting better each year, and I think kids are enjoying my lessons outside each year. And I'm finding ways to work with principals and other support staff to get them outdoors.
Thanks, Ken. So another part of our work that is really important at Children in Nature Network is emphasizing and putting a spotlight on equitable access to nature. It's not enough to be connecting with nature, but we need to be mindful of equity, justice, racial justice, environmental justice in the way that we think about our relationship to the outdoors and to nature. And so a part of this art exhibition is also meant to provide a space to talk about and to express our ideas and feelings about equitable access to nature as an important part of our mission. So I'll open it up to all of you. Please feel free to share if you have any thoughts on how making art or creative writing or poetry can help kids express themselves about some of these really critical, important issues around racial equity and justice.
I can start just because I started last time. I can get the ball rolling. When I work with very young children, and one of the things that we like to help them do, we're on an urban campus, although we're fortunate to have some pretty great green spaces. We're, right across the bridge from downtown Minneapolis. And one of the things that we really like to do is help children see nature in all of the places that we are. So like I said, we have a lot of construction. We're surrounded on all the sides of our school by roads and busy days. There's a train yard like 10 yards off of our back playground. So the children really understand that they're in a city, but we want them to share the nature that they are seeing, both at school and at home. So one of the ways that we can do that is just by asking children to bring in things that they find that are, nature treasures, where they can share those at home, and then they can create wonderful things together, kind of like Zach was talking about, some community art where they're all bringing in things from their homes and creating something in this kind of school home environment. We also like to do things where we send children out with a camera and for them to find nature in these spaces around school, but also at home. So, those are some great pictures of just children digging in and observing of what a connection to nature can look like. And the bottom picture, so like Ken, I'm from the West Coast. I grew up in Las Vegas, and frozen ponds were not something that I was very familiar with, but my children are from this place. They were born in Minnesota, and they have a very confident way of being on ice that I don't yet have, but I'm getting better at it every year. And that is a place where they have developed such courage around being there, and it really has helped them grow as people. And so I see that also as a way that they have learned to express themselves. They find beauty in those days where it's so cold that the ice freezes before it snowed. And that's one of the kind of wonderful things that they've been able to see about their environment, where sometimes I just think the more layers. So thank you for bringing up the slides and for letting me share a little bit about that.
Thanks, Sheila.
Ken, is there something you want to share on that topic? If not, I can share something.
Yeah, I could share a little bit about that. I think equity. I think, so I grew up in the city, and I think the first experiences that I had with art was like graffiti. And I saw a lot of street art, and like even neighborhoods that were broken down, because I grew up in South LA, like as bad as it seemed in some places, that street art actually made my neighborhood nice. And so I really enjoyed seeing that as a kid. And when I got to school, the connection wasn't there. It was like that art seemed more like Picasso and then books, and I was like, wait, the street art so different. And when I got older and I went to college and I went to high school, and I had the luxury to like go outside of my little street, I got to see the beach, and I got to see the ocean, and do some life drawing with my college professor. I was like, wow, art, like I could relate to it now because I was having those experiences. So just thinking about what you just said, with kids, some of our kids don't have that experience. They're driving on the bus, they go home, they back to school, drive the bus, they go home. And I was like, even though we're so close to nature, we're not there. We're not being exposed to it. And I was one of those kids. So I think now that I started teaching, I'm just having this conversation reminded me that one of the things was like, oh, these kids, like some of them haven't even gone outside and looked at a tree, or like that may seem so strange because I do it, but I think it's really hard. I mean, it's easy to assume that kids are being exposed to this stuff, but a lot of them, like I said, for me, I wasn't. So I try to find those kids that, again, may have a challenge in the art room or any other class, and really like, hey, this is cool. We're going to go outside. We're going to have fun. And something simple, just sitting down and looking at a tree, can open their minds to a new world that just hidden away. And this is one of the pictures where I take my kids and we do 1 point perspectives. that she's sharing, and we make it really accessible to them, and safe. And I actually have them do this after a couple of lessons indoors where they're like learning how to draw in the screens during the winter. And then once it gets nice and clear like that, we're like, well, we're going outside, and they're like, all right, you see that little point over there? You see how everything's disappearing? That's the vanishing point. And you see that sign is getting bigger and that tree is getting bigger. You know, that's the foreground. And all of a sudden the kids are like, Mr. Rivera, look, I see things, look at that car, it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So they get to see something that they probably take for granted. And just sitting down with a piece of paper, they start seeing art come alive to them and like the lesson. So thank you for sharing that screenshot.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.
Zach, did you have something to share?
Yeah, I'll share something briefly. Came to me just now that I did a project with a third grade class where I was there repeatedly over time in Oakland, California, and we were making art with loose natural materials, sticks and rocks and leaves, a lot of things that had fallen into the school grounds and some things that people brought in from home. The school was like a safe area for them. And Ken, you used the word safe twice so far, and I think that's really, really important. In that classroom, when we were making art together with nature and rocks and sticks, a kid made a sculpture, if you like, with a whole bunch of rocks, and every rock had a stick pointed at it. And when we asked him about it, he said, well, this is what it's like outside of school. Every rock is a person and every stick is a gun in my neighborhood. And we're not safe outside of here. I'm choking up a little bit. So it was quite a moving experience to hear how this opened up a conversation in the safe classroom about how the other kids felt in their space. And then he said, with the rocks, the rocks are hard. The rocks are tough. I've held those rocks in my hand, you know, and we can make it. You know, he took inspiration from nature and from that creative act. This picture is a different one from a different group, and this was made with teenagers, and this is showing free speech. And what was interesting here was that they chose to use the flowers for the speech that this person was making. And while they were making it, one of them said, but the flowers, that's how the plants are talking too. Mm. The plants are saying something to the birds and to the insects to pollinate them. So again, it was an example of how creating with the materials created a conversation and more understanding, and then ultimately more inquiry. Like, what is that flower anyway? Was it okay to pick that? Where did that come from? You know, a lot of questions came up. Thank you for showing that photo too.
Thanks, Ken. Both of those examples, I think, are just so potent and, you know, illustrative of the power of art to help us express hard to express feelings and ideas, and especially, you know, I think challenging for adults, but maybe children and teens are able to make those connections in ways that I think are just really, really beautiful. The final question for our discussion today is to offer up just some space to share some other success stories of art or creative writing or poetry, either in the classroom or out of the classroom, that any of you have seen be especially transformative for kids, your own children or students. Zach, you've kind of launched us into that with your last two examples, but does anything else come to mind?
I can just share, I was doing an after school, and Zach's story reminded me of this, but I was doing an after school kind of program at an elementary school, and their outdoor play spaces were all asphalt. There were not very many spaces. There were a couple of like trees in just like a little circle of grass on their own. And I was going to do an environmental ed after school program. And so the children, I started talking to them about like, what do you know about nature? And, they kind of talked about nature as something really far away. Like, oh, like my mom and dad used to go camping, or we went camping once, or one time we went to the state park. They would share, like a time where they went somewhere far away. And I really wanted to help them connect with nature nearby. And so we just went out to the asphalt space and we just sat out there, and we just used our bodies to like listen and feel and watch the clouds. And what kind of bubbled to the surface was that there were birds even in this place. There were enough of those trees in little circles that birds were, in the area. And so we started a study about birds, and there was, some drawing and some painting of birds, but also we started talking about what do the birds need, and what kind of birds live here, and, what do they need for their homes, and what do they eat. And so we did this kind of study that took a really beautiful space, and it was an art magnet, the school. So we did find a kind of a courtyard on the other side away from where the children played. And so we started to kind of cultivate this courtyard that was normally used as just like the place where you take photos in front of the building, but children didn't have access to. And we started to use that as a place to kind of call birds to the school. So we built bird feeders and, and bird houses, and the children were so creative around that, and they really brought to their school nature. And I thought it was such a beautiful thing. We also had, some of the birds that they saw were like pigeons, and they wanted to have a conversation. Well, like, how can we get more of them to move here? And I was like, wow, like most children or most adults don't want to call more pigeons, but it's one of the species that we're talking about, and embracing the beauty of all of the animals was a pretty special experience.
Thanks, Sheila.
I can touch on something that's transformative. I think when I first started teaching, I was trying to get the kids to draw something. It could be a challenge. And then there were some kids that were brave enough to like really try their best and show their work. And I will put their artwork up. And then just saying, oh, look at Emily's picture. Just putting a kid in the spotlight, I didn't realize how much I had power over that. And like, wow, if I just bring a kid's name up and I just show it to a class, that kid feels so empowered. And so I always like make it a point when I'm up here in the classroom just to pick a couple kids and just show their work. Because like I said, I take it for granted as a teacher that how much power we have. And then I remember when I started putting kids' artwork in the hallways, like they will be walking by, oh, look, my picture's up, or this is up, or look, Mr. Rivera put this up. I was like, wow, I'm just putting a picture up, but it means so much to the kids when they're walking down the hall and seeing their artwork. And I was, wow, I have so much power. I can just put their artwork. I'm like a curator out here. And then eventually I told myself, how much more can I push this? So I called up the coffee shop down the street from our school, and I started putting their artwork in there. And we started a little art show that we've been doing there for, I think, the last 5 years. And kids seeing their artwork in a public space was such a gratifying thing for me that I didn't realize, like, again, taking that for granted, and seeing how much that can boost their self-esteem, and to think like, wow, I'm really doing a difference here. This year was going to be a challenge. So what I did was we drew a mural together, and then designed it. Then I ended up projecting it to a canvas, and then I cut it up in 6 pieces, and I sent them off to the students, and they returned them back to me. So I have the mural. I got to put it together, and we're still going to do the coffee shop mural artwork this year. And they're all like, oh, I can't, what day are we going to do this? And I was like, y'all really excited about putting your artwork there, aren't you? And so, again, it's one of those things that I really look forward to, is putting kids' artwork up, highlighting them in front of class, and even putting the artwork in public. It's just, I think, it's very gratifying for the students and for me. And I mean, that's again, I really feel blessed to be able to do that with students.
Thanks, Ken. That really, I think, brings us full circle, to why Children in Nature Network is putting on this art exhibition. The idea that we can be spotlighting individuals, artwork on our website for an international audience, really supporting children and teens to see themselves as leaders. This whole exhibition is within the program area of our leadership series, the Inside Out leadership series at Children in Nature Network. So we're seeing this as an extension of expanding the idea of who a leader is. And, let's start them young. Let's empower kids and teens to see themselves as leaders in the nature connection movement, and see how that may inspire actions in the future. So that's really really great connection there. Well, I think we've just about closed out our discussion. I want to thank you, Sheila, Zach, and Ken, for sharing your insights and your time with us today. A reminder to everyone who is watching this discussion that our call for art and poetry with children and teens is open. The call for art is open through April 30th, and the exhibition will open online on May 20th. You can visit our website, insideoutleadershipseries.org or childrenandnature.org for more details, including some sample lesson plans that include environmental artists and some sample art projects to help build some inspiration, as well as a toolkit for parents and teachers to talk about equitable nature access with children. We've compiled a lot of different resources, books, videos, etc., to help aid in that conversation. So yeah, just thank you again. We really appreciate your time.